All right. Well, this all feels like pretty important stuff. Like, how do you come out? How do you share these things? How do you embrace a world that has all of these like really negative or rigid ideas about what your sexuality should look like? So I'm curious then, Amberly, if somebody has one of these more dark or taboo fantasies or fetishes, or maybe we could even call it a sexual need, what are some options for finding satisfaction without letting these things run their life or without feeling like they can only date somebody who shares their very like niche and specific fetish?
Ah, Lord. You always have the loaded questions. How 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 to safely be able to explore, I guess that's one way to put it, how to safely be able to explore these different types of fetishes. Yes. Um
Yeah, yeah. If you're not dating somebody that shares in this with you, do you just have to
it's
break up?
no. Um I would definitely say make sure that you uh, try to have, your partner better than better than anybody else's, well, in theory, hopefully. You don't have to necessarily break up. There's a lot of people who find ways to scratch those itches in different ways. We watch porn. um they call me.
Hmm.
They call, they watch webcam performers. But I do believe that there should be some level of consent. It breaks my heart when I find out that someone isn't talking to their partner
Yeah.
about these types of things.
So maybe it's asking your partner like, "Hey, are you interested in diapering me?" No? Cool. Okay. Are you cool with me calling a phone sex operator or
Yeah.
getting on cam or, negotiating like how rigid is our monogamy? All right. So we're a monogamous relationship. Does that mean that porn is off the table? Because maybe that's not a thing that we've actually discussed or that people have thought to include in that negotiation around monogamy.
200%. And the funny thing is, like, I know that porn is off the table for some people, and again, do you. Um, but there's a lot of, we live in a society now where that's not really the norm, at least that I have seen,
Hmm.
where like we all kind of accept that they watch. I mean, Pornhub is ubiquitous for David Dobrik. Not, I know he's in hot water, but had porn stars on his vlog before all of the controversies that have happened. The Paul brothers, Jake and Logan Paul, have porn stars on their stuff all the time. We're in a society where we do understand porn is a reality, even if we don't want it to be. So, yeah, do talk to your partners and find out where those boundaries are, because you don't want them to find out one day that you were engaging in this behavior, because they wouldn't, which is going to potentially make them feel bad, whatever. You don't want to have that happen. Have them be okay with it. Get their blessing from it. And if you can't get their blessing from it, try to talk it out and find out why. Try to see where you guys can compromise. And if you can't, call Christy. Christy can help you guys talk that out.
Yeah, I mean, it is worth saying that no matter how monogamous you think your relationship is, you still owe it to each other to have a conversation where you negotiate where you fall on that spectrum. You might think, okay, this is a monogamous relationship. We don't need to talk about polyamory or relationship anarchy or any of that stuff. Well, yeah, you still do. Is it against the rules to have friends? Is it against the rules to look at porn? Is it against the rules to flirt with a like a server at a restaurant? I mean, what are those rules? And you need to be talking about them. I think that's really the key to everything we're looking at here is discuss. Be willing to talk about these things with your partner. And if that feels icky and gross, okay, I get that. I hear you. Go slow, do what you need to do, read a book, talk to a therapist, like work at it. But if you feel like you are in a relationship where you're just never going to be able to have any of these conversations, have a very real conversation with yourself about whether this is a relationship you want to be in.
110%. I think a lot of people spend way too many years in a relationship where it's oil and water. Neither person is bad. I love oil and I love water. But it just you don't go together, and it's because they're not having this conversation. So you end up, I don't want to say you wasted time, because I believe there's lessons in everything, but you could I I think you would be happier going to find someone who understands your kinks more. I will say on that though, if you're finding yourself hitting a brick wall in terms of getting that person to understand your kinks, or even just they don't even have to like agree with or want to participate, but understand where you're coming from, ask them about some of their sexual desires that have been unfulfilled, the things that they think about, that they find hot, that they have not played in, and maybe try engaging in some of that with them. Again, it's not about, hey, I did this for you, so you have to do this for me, but
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe they just need to be warmed up and pulled out of their shell more before they feel more comfortable. Because we lived in a very sexually repressed society.
Yeah,
And
you know, we framed all of this in terms of like, how do I tell my partner about my kinks? But I think you've made a really good point here that if you engage in this as a dialogue, like what are your kinks and what are your interests, as opposed to just monologuing at somebody, this is the sex that I need to have with you. It's a very different dynamic.
on your knees, Christy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, it's actually one of the keys of networking. I know, business and marketing. I've got to pull it back to that somehow. One of the top keys of networking, networkers will tell you, is when you first meet somebody, try to do as little talking about yourself as possible. Try to focus sharply on them. Ask them about their business, what their target demographic is, how long have they been in business, why do they love their business, who is their ideal client. And if you spend 10 minutes asking somebody about themselves, at some point, unless they're a complete dick, in which you may not want to do business with them at that point, they will ask you about yourself. And I like to tell people all relationships are like, all types of relationships are the same. You can pull elements out of that and apply it to another relationship. If you do the same with your partners, if you ask a ton about them and you're genuinely asking, you're not asking to get them to do what you want them to do, but you're
Hmm.
asking a lot about them so that you can understand them. It's going to help you be able to frame what you want to say to them in a manner in which they'll hear it best. Again, not about forcing them, but getting them to understand communication. But it also is going to make them feel safer and more open to you, and maybe more reciprocating to eating your octopus tentacle.
That's a catchphrase we need to get going. Yeah,
I if you guys make some plush octopus tentacles based off this episode, I will buy one.
Hey, you know what? I don't know if Teespring actually offers a logoed octopus tentacle, but that feels like something we can look into. Let's find out about that.
We can have t-shirts that say, "Will you eat my octopus
Will you
tentacle?"
eat? Yeah, all right. Okay, so now we're really clicking. I've got some ideas. We should probably wrap this up pretty soon
Sorry.
so I can get designing.
I
No, no, no.
love this.
Well, you talked a little bit about, explore FetLife, explore Literatical, like get familiar with this thing that you're interested in. Watch some videos, like whatever else, before talking to your partner. If people are starting to explore perhaps some of these darker, heavier fetishes at home, I know we're talking very broadly about a lot of different interests, but are there any maybe philosophies or just good ethics to bring to that exploration?
Yes. Again, I can't stress consent enough, because not just sexuality, but we're also dealing with a lot of these deal with consensual non-consent, which means I'm consensually entering into this, but the erotic idea is that there's going to be non-consent, if that makes
Mm,
any sense.
yeah.
The idea is I want you to take me for a ride, and the idea is for me to participate in this role play, this kink, this play, you are taking my consent away, but there's stuff that we've negotiated. So one of the philosophies is you really, whoever is going to be the dominant role needs to be someone who's very well educated. Look for people who have been in the scene that are giving information on this stuff, or whatever scene that you're looking in. They need to have been in that scene for at least, I would say, 5 years. People who are just starting off usually have romanticized the kink and they don't fully understand it, which can be dangerous. Or they haven't explored enough to be able to understand the pitfalls and the nuance and stuff that goes with that particular kink. So I want to see someone who's been around for 5 years. I want to see someone who is active. If you're reading someone's stuff, I want to see if they're active in different communities. I want to see them talking on podcasts, if they have some blogs. I want to see their tweets. I want to see their Reddit posts. That way you can kind of gauge whether or not this is someone who's actually speaking on this as an authority figure versus, I call them fetish heads. Again, it goes back to the romanticizing.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So I want to see if this is someone who's actually explored this, or there's someone who it's pure fantasy. Everything that they're talking about in the scope has never happened. They haven't actually played with a person. It's just fantasy. So that is one of the safety philosophies that I would definitely say going into the deep dark stuff. But also the other thing is, don't I see a lot of people coming into subjects that are dark and seedy and bad. It's not bad, but that society labels as bad. They start getting into it and they feel like they're bad because the more that they're reading about this stuff, they start thinking, wow, I must be a really fucked up person. You're not a fucked up person. These are things that speak to, I'm stealing your words, Sir Christy. I'm going to steal your words for a second when you were saying that, it's just it's an urge, it's a drive, it's an itch, it's you want it scratched. You're not weird. And if you kind of get into this, I think we talked about this last time, maybe the cyclical nature of binging and purging when it comes to kink. You'll see someone who dives into it for like 2-3 months and then they try to delete everything, forget that kink is a part of them. If something keeps coming back, it's something that you're really interested in, it's something that does it for you, that binging and purging cycle tends to make it to where you go deeper and further every single time. And a lot of people end up in these places eventually where they're like, I don't know how the fuck I got here. An example of this with blackmail fetish, this is where people end up actually having their family members contacted because they almost need, I don't want to liken kinks to a drug, but because they're on a vicious hamster wheel, it can become like that. So you have to really take a step back and say, this is a part of me. It's not something I'm going to get rid of. I need to embrace it, because every time you go and you pack it back up and you repress it, every time you jump back in it, you're going to drop it again with more fervor. You're going to, which sounds like it could be a good thing, but it's a double-edged sword. It will make it to where you feel like you are chasing some kind of high. And then once you achieve it, you leave again. So next time you need it to be, I don't want to say worse, but you need to do something more graphic. And for some people, maybe that's what they want, but I find that most don't. So
it can be a very vicious cycle when you lose that sense of balance, when it becomes like an obsession because you get so into it. And, passion is great. Bring your passion, but maybe mellow it out just a little bit and take these incremental steps.
Exactly. It shouldn't be something where you pack it away for until next summer. Kinks are not summer camp.
If you're throwing away all your toys, deleting all of your links and all of the, the videos that you've purchased and things like that, I'm not saying you're not allowed to do that, but maybe ask yourself why. How healthy is your relationship with this kink?
Exactly, exactly. I don't think that that's necessarily a sign of a healthy behavior. I would really explore why. And if you come back to maybe your kink is just doing really weird stuff. When I say weird, like how society would view it. Doing society viewed weird stuff and going too far, then packing away from so maybe that is what your kink ends up being. But for most people, and honestly 99% of them, when I see them on this cycle, I get to the point where I block them on.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather not even take their money because I don't want to be accomplice to that.
Sure.
I did see in chat where Junk Shop Library said, and make sure the top really understands the bottom aspects. Subspace can be very tricky. 110%. Whoever is guiding this, which if you're exploring kink, a lot of times most people come in as a bottom, and then they end up going
Mm-hmm.
becoming a top. And I like to say a good top understand what's like to be a bottom. I've never used a toy on someone else that I haven't had done to me. I've never explored a kink that I haven't myself been in the opposite position. ABDL, it's not my kink. I don't like it. When I say I don't like it, I like it enough to like do it, obviously. Like I'm not against it. It's not my particular kink,
Yeah, I
but
mean, you can work at a sushi restaurant without particularly enjoying uni or everything else on the menu, right?
yeah, exactly. So like I participate in ABDL. Doesn't disgust me. It doesn't do it for me. I'm not getting off to this. But it was a big thing for me before I got really heavy into ABDL for me to go and have someone I knew was well trained as a top to put me as a to top me so I understood what it was like to be a bottom. I have never done something to someone else that I haven't had done to me first, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I think that that is just an absolute like bedrock foundational value, especially where pain is involved, whether that's like literal physical pain or just psychological pain. You know, if you're going to drip hot wax on somebody else, maybe test it and see how hot it is because you're not tied up. You're not blindfolded. Like you're in control of the situation. And if you're not willing to do that, maybe I have some questions and some challenges to your ethics as a dom. It's not a universal rule in absolutely every circumstance, but it's definitely a good
Oh,
philosophy to keep in mind.
yeah, absolutely. And like with that, again, I don't test absolutely if you've used a dildo that's 6 inches and about the same girth
You get the
functional.
notion.
Yeah, like if you swap it out for one that's a different color or a slightly different brand, like you're still probably good.
Yeah.
Um but I'm not going to go from using strictly dildos to now I'm using anal hooks on people. No, no, no. No, no, no. That takes another expertise.
Yeah, that's gonna be, you're gonna need another class. Before you use an anal hook, make sure to take another
There's a
class.
class.
That's just another thing to take home.